At 3:47 a.m., Daniel Brooks found her. Victoria Hale, the woman whose face graced magazine covers, whose empire stretched across continents, lay crumpled on Italian marble, gasping for air that wouldn't come. Her perfectly manicured fingers clawed at her throat. Blood trickled from her nose. This wasn't supposed to happen to people like her, people with money, power, control. But Daniel knew that smell. He'd smelled it before, in a hospital room 2 years ago, holding his wife's hand as machines beeped their final song. He knew what was killing Victoria Hale, and he knew she was hiding it from everyone. Stay with me until the end of this story. Hit that like button and comment which city you're watching from. I want to see how far this truth travels. The Los Angeles skyline glittered like scattered diamonds against black velvet, each pinpoint of light representing someone's dream, someone's ambition, someone's desperate climb toward something better. From the 43rd floor of the Zenith Tower, those lights looked almost close enough to touch, close enough to own. Victoria Hale stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of her penthouse, one hand pressed against the glass, watching her reflection waver against the city she'd conquered. Conquered. That's what Forbes called it, what TechCrunch celebrated, what her board of directors toasted with champagne that cost more per bottle than most people earned in a month. But conquest, Victoria had learned, came with a price tag that never appeared on any balance sheet. Her reflection stared back at her, 38 years old, shoulder-length auburn hair styled to perfection even at 11 p.m., gray suit tailored to disguise how much weight she'd lost. The woman in the glass looked powerful, untouchable, the kind of woman who built a tech empire from a college dorm room, who turned a simple app into a platform worth $3 billion, who made grown men in boardrooms sweat when she asked questions they couldn't answer. The woman in the glass was a lie. Victoria's hand trembled against the window. Another cough built in her chest. She could feel it gathering like a storm, that familiar tightness that meant she had maybe 30 seconds before it hit. She turned from the window, moving quickly across the open-concept living space toward the master bathroom, her heels clicking against reclaimed hardwood that cost $18,000 to install. She made it to the bathroom just as the cough exploded from her lungs. She gripped the edge of the marble sink, Carrara marble, imported from Italy, installed by craftsmen who'd worked on restoration projects at the Vatican, and coughed until her ribs ached, until tears streamed down her face, until she tasted copper on her tongue. When it finally subsided, she looked up at her reflection, mascara smudged, lipstick gone, face flushed and eyes bloodshot. This was the truth. This was what no camera ever captured, what no journalist ever saw, what no one at Hale Innovations suspected. Victoria opened the medicine cabinet, not the decorative one in the powder room where guests might look, but the real one behind the mirror, stocked like a pharmacy. Bottles lined the shelves, pills for anxiety, pills for sleep, pills to wake up, pills to stop the shaking, pills prescribed by doctors who never asked questions when you paid them enough. She reached past all of them for the mints, Altoids, the curiously strong kind. She'd gone through 3 tins this week alone. Her phone buzzed on the counter. She didn't need to look to know what it was. Another message from her assistant, Marcus, with tomorrow's schedule. Or today's schedule, technically, since it was already past midnight. Morning show interview at 7. Board meeting at 9. Lunch with potential investors at noon. Product launch rehearsal at 3. Dinner with the mayor's economic development team at 7. 18 hours of being Victoria Hale, tech visionary, industry leader, woman who had it all. She popped 2 mints into her mouth and felt the burn spread across her tongue. The sensation grounded her, pulled her back into her body, reminded her she was still here, still standing, still in control, still lying. The intercom by the door buzzed, 2 short bursts, the signal from building security that the night cleaning crew had arrived. Victoria glanced at the Patek Philippe watch on her wrist. 11:47 p.m., right on schedule. That was something she appreciated about the cleaning service. They were punctual, discreet. They came after she'd usually left for whatever evening obligation filled her calendar, and they were gone before she returned. Except tonight, she was home. Tonight, she'd canceled dinner with a venture capitalist from Sand Hill Road, claiming an emergency board situation. The truth was simpler and more terrifying. She couldn't trust her body anymore. Couldn't trust that she wouldn't start coughing in the middle of the Chilean sea bass course. Couldn't trust that her hands wouldn't shake while signing the check. Couldn't trust that she'd make it through dessert without excusing herself to the bathroom for the fourth time. So she'd stayed home. Ordered in from a restaurant she'd never eat from. Food she'd push around a plate and eventually throw away. Opened her laptop with every intention of working. Stared at spreadsheets until the numbers blurred together like watercolor in rain. The doorbell rang, polite, professional, exactly once. Victoria straightened her blazer, wiped under her eyes with her thumb, and crossed to the door. The cleaning crew had her security code, could let themselves in, but they always rang first. Another small courtesy that made them invisible, unthreatening, part of the building's machinery rather than intruders in her private space. She opened the door to find a man standing in the hallway, bucket of cleaning supplies in one hand, vacuum cleaner beside him. He was tall, maybe 6'1", with dark hair graying at the temples, probably mid-40s, wearing the standard uniform of black pants and a navy polo shirt with Evergreen Cleaning Services embroidered over the pocket. His face had the kind of weathered look that came from years of hard work and harder choices. "Ms. Hale," he said, voice low and respectful. "Sorry to disturb you. We'll work quickly and quietly." "It's fine," Victoria said, stepping back to let him in. "I'm working in the office. I won't be in your way." "No problem at all, ma'am." He wheeled his supplies inside, moving with the efficient economy of someone who'd done this 1,000 times before. "I'm Daniel, by the way. I'll be handling your apartment from now on. Miguel, the usual guy, retired last week." "Okay." Victoria barely looked at him. In her world, service staff were interchangeable, forgettable, part of the infrastructure that kept her life running smoothly. She didn't need to know their names any more than she needed to know the names of the people who maintained the elevators or stocked the building's gym. "Kitchen and bathrooms first, please. I have calls in the morning." "Yes, ma'am." She retreated to her office, a glass-enclosed room at the far end of the penthouse, separated from the main living space by sliding doors that cost more than a luxury car. She left the doors open just enough to maintain the illusion of working, of being the kind of person who stayed late reviewing quarterly projections and market analysis. Instead, she opened her laptop and stared at her reflection in the dark screen. This wasn't how it was supposed to be. 10 years ago, she'd been a graduate student at Stanford, living on ramen and ambition, coding until dawn in a cramped apartment she shared with 2 roommates who thought her app idea was cute but unrealistic. 5 years ago, she'd been on the cover of Fortune, the youngest woman to take a tech company public, fielding calls from journalists who wanted to know the secret to her success. The secret. If they only knew. Through the open office door, she could hear Daniel moving through the apartment. The soft spray of cleaning solution, the whisper of cloth on glass, the quiet efficiency of someone who'd learned to work without leaving a trace, to service a space without disturbing the people who lived there. Victoria opened her bottom desk drawer, the one with the lock, the one Marcus didn't have a key to, and pulled out a small leather case. Her hands shook slightly as she unzipped it. Inside, arranged in neat rows, were her real medication. Not the prescription bottles in the bathroom cabinet, not the vitamins and supplements she posted about on her health-conscious Instagram feed. The truth. She'd started 5 years ago, right after the Fortune cover, right when everything was supposed to be perfect. It was supposed to be once, just to get through a particularly brutal week of product launches and investor meetings. Just to maintain the pace everyone expected from her, the pace she expected from herself. One of her investors, the kind of Silicon Valley fixture who wore expensive hoodies and talked about disrupting industries, had offered it casually at a party in Malibu. "Better than coffee," he'd said with a knowing smile. "Everyone uses it. How do you think we keep up?" Once became twice. Twice became whenever she needed it, whenever became every day. And somewhere along the way, the drug that was supposed to help her keep pace had become the only thing keeping her upright. Victoria's phone buzzed again. Another message from Marcus. "Morning Show wants to add 5 minutes to your segment. They want to discuss the new UI changes. Need talking points?" She typed back, "I'll handle it." Marcus's response came immediately. "You always do." "Get some sleep, boss." Sleep. The word was almost funny. She couldn't remember the last time she'd slept more than 3 hours straight. Couldn't remember the last time she'd woken up feeling rested instead of wrung out, her heart racing before she even opened her eyes. In the main living area, she heard Daniel's footsteps approaching the office wing. She quickly closed the leather case and shoved it back in the drawer, closing it just as he appeared in the doorway of the office, with a polite knock on the frame. "Sorry to interrupt, Ms. Hale. I'll be doing the office last, if that works for you." Victoria looked up, preparing to dismiss him with the kind of cool professionalism that kept service staff at arm's length. But something made her pause. Maybe it was the lateness of the hour, or the exhaustion pressing down on her shoulders, or the way her hand still trembled slightly from zipping the case. Or maybe it was the way Daniel looked at her, not with the calculation she saw in boardrooms, not with the awe she saw at conferences, not with the hunger she saw from people who wanted something from her, just looked at her, like she was a person, a tired person working too late in an empty penthouse. "It's fine," she said. "I'm about done anyway." He nodded and started to turn away, then paused. "You okay, ma'am? You need some water or anything?" The question caught her off guard. When was the last time someone had asked if she was okay? When was the last time she'd let anyone close enough to notice if she wasn't? "I'm fine," she said automatically. "Just a long day." "Yeah." He smiled slightly, a weathered, understanding smile that suggested he knew something about long days. "I get those. I'll try to stay out of your way." He left, and Victoria found herself staring at the empty doorway. Something about the exchange unsettled her, though she couldn't pinpoint why. Maybe because it had been genuine. Maybe because she'd almost told the truth. "No, I'm not okay. I haven't been okay in years. I'm drowning and I can't let anyone see." She closed her laptop and stood, suddenly unable to sit still. The penthouse felt too small, too quiet despite Daniel's presence. She walked to the windows again, pressing her forehead against the cool glass, looking down at the city 43 floors below. How easy it would be to just let go. Let the empire crumble. Let the magazine covers fade. Let the world see the truth, that Victoria Hale, tech visionary, was really just a woman who'd climbed so high she'd forgotten how to come back down, who'd pushed so hard she'd broken herself, who'd sacrificed so much she'd lost track of what she was sacrificing for. But she couldn't. The moment she showed weakness, the moment anyone suspected she wasn't the invincible force they'd invested in, believed in, built careers around, it would all collapse. The board would force her out. The investors would pull funding. The press would feast on her fall like piranhas on wounded prey. Better to keep climbing. Better to keep pushing. Better to keep lying. Behind her, she heard Daniel working in the kitchen. The sound of water running, cabinets opening and closing, the quiet domesticity of someone cleaning up after other people's lives. It reminded her of growing up in Pasadena, watching her mother clean houses to keep food on the table after her father left. Her mother had cleaned penthouses like this one, probably, wiping down marble countertops and mopping imported floors in homes she'd never be able to afford. Victoria had sworn she'd never live like that, never be invisible, never be powerless. And she'd kept that promise. She was visible now, powerful now, important now. So why did she feel more trapped than her mother ever looked? A cough built in her chest again. She walked quickly toward the bathroom, passing through the living room where Daniel was wiping down the coffee table. She felt his eyes on her, not intrusive, just aware, and she hated it. Hated being seen. Hated the possibility that he might notice something off, something wrong. In the bathroom, she coughed until her throat was raw. When she looked in the mirror this time, there was blood on her teeth. Just a little, just enough to terrify her. She rinsed her mouth, popped another 3 mints, and stared at her reflection until the woman looking back resembled someone in control. When she emerged, Daniel was in the office, emptying the trash can. He glanced up as she passed, and for just a second, their eyes met. Victoria saw something flicker across his face, concern, maybe, or recognition. But then it was gone, replaced by professional neutrality. "I'll be done in about 20 minutes, Ms. Hale," he said. "Is there anything specific you'd like me to focus on?" "No," she said. "Everything's fine." Another lie. She was getting so good at them. She retreated to her bedroom, the master suite with its California king bed that she usually only slept in for a few hours before dawn, and closed the door. Through the walls, she could hear Daniel finishing up, the sound of the vacuum in the office, the spray of glass cleaner on mirrors. Victoria lay down on top of the covers, still fully dressed, and stared at the ceiling. The room spun slightly. Her heart beat too fast. Her hands wouldn't stop shaking. Tomorrow she'd be on television, smiling and confident, talking about innovation and disruption and the future of technology. Tomorrow she'd sit across from investors and convince them to bet millions on her vision. Tomorrow she'd stand in front of her employees and inspire them to work harder, push further, believe in the impossible. Tomorrow she'd be Victoria Hale again. Tonight, she was just a woman lying in the dark, counting her heartbeats, wondering how much longer she could keep running before her body gave up the race. She didn't hear Daniel leave, didn't hear the door close or the elevator ding. One moment there was the distant sound of cleaning, and the next there was silence. The particular silence of a space that had been serviced and sanitized, made perfect and empty. Victoria closed her eyes and waited for sleep that wouldn't come, or for dawn that would come too soon, or for the moment when everything finally caught up with her, and the carefully constructed world she'd built came crashing down. In the dark, her phone buzzed one more time. She picked it up and saw Marcus's name. By the way, the mayor's team wants to push dinner to 8 p.m. tomorrow. That works, right? Victoria typed back, "Perfect." She set the phone down and laughed, a dry, bitter sound in the empty room. Perfect. Nothing was perfect. Nothing had been perfect in years. But she'd keep pretending, keep performing, keep lying, because the alternative was admitting the truth, and the truth would destroy everything. But, 3 floors down, in the service elevator that smelled like industrial cleaner and old metal, Daniel Brooks leaned against the wall and let out a long breath. His shift was only half over, 4 more apartments to clean before dawn, but his mind was stuck on the 43rd floor. Something was wrong up there. He'd seen it immediately, had recognized the signs from years of experience that had nothing to do with cleaning apartments and everything to do with watching someone he loved destroy themselves inch by inch. The smell, for one thing. Underneath the expensive perfume and the scent of money, underneath the fresh flowers and the artisanal candles, there was another smell. Chemical. Sharp. The kind that made your sinuses burn if you got too close. The mints, for another. 3 empty tins in the bathroom trash, one on the nightstand, another on the office desk. You didn't go through that many mints unless you were covering up something you didn't want people to smell. And her eyes. God, those eyes. He'd seen that look before. The 2 wide pupils, the constant movement, the way they couldn't quite focus on any one thing for too long, the way they darted to the desk drawer when he'd knocked on the office door, guilty and defensive. Daniel had watched his wife, Sarah, wear that same expression for 8 months before cancer took her. Except Sarah's had come from pain medication, from legitimate prescriptions turned into dependencies because the alternative was agony. Victoria Hale's came from something else, something chosen, something that was killing her just as surely. The elevator doors opened on the 39th floor. Daniel grabbed his supplies and headed toward apartment 3907, his mind still on the woman 43 floors above. He should forget about it, should focus on his work, his bills, his son waiting at home for him to finish the night shift so they could have breakfast together before school. He should mind his business. But he kept seeing Sarah's face, kept hearing the doctors explaining that if she'd come in sooner, if they'd caught it earlier, if she'd told them about the symptoms instead of hiding them. If. Daniel unlocked apartment 3907, a corporate rental, always empty, easy to clean, and got to work. But part of his mind stayed on the 43rd floor, turning over what he'd seen, what he suspected, what he absolutely should not get involved in, what he probably couldn't walk away from. Because he'd walked away once before, had believed Sarah when she said she was fine, had let her hide her pain until it was too late. And he'd spent the last 2 years living with that regret, wondering if he'd pushed harder, asked more questions, refused to accept her lies. If. By the time he finished the 39th floor and moved on to the 35th, dawn was starting to break over Los Angeles. The city lights faded as natural light took over, revealing the smog and traffic and reality that the nighttime glamour hid. Daniel thought about Victoria Hale up there in her penthouse, probably getting ready for her television appearance, probably perfect and powerful and completely in control, probably dying. And he thought about his son, Ethan, 8 years old, who'd already lost one parent and didn't need his father sticking his neck out for a billionaire who could buy and sell their entire neighborhood without noticing the expense. He thought about all of this as he cleaned apartment 3504 and 3201, and finally 2847. He thought about it as he returned his supplies to the service closet and clocked out. He thought about it on the bus ride home, watching the sunrise paint the sky in shades of orange and gold. And he kept thinking about it when he walked into his small apartment in Echo Park and found Ethan asleep on the couch, geometry homework spread across the coffee table, having waited up for him even though Daniel had told him to go to bed. Daniel covered his son with a blanket and looked at the picture on the mantel. Sarah, taken 3 months before she died, still smiling even though she must have been in agony, still lying, still trying to protect them. He made the decision then, though he didn't quite know it yet, made it in his heart even while his brain screamed that it was stupid, dangerous, none of his business. But he'd failed Sarah by believing her lies. He wouldn't fail someone else the same way. Even if that someone was a billionaire who probably didn't even remember his name. Even if it cost him everything. The pattern revealed itself slowly, the way truth always does when someone's trying to hide it. Daniel returned to the 43rd floor the following week at the same time, 11:47 p.m., precise as clockwork. He'd thought about Victoria Hale constantly in the days between shifts, weighing whether to say something, do something, or simply let it go. Ethan needed him focused on their own survival, not on the private disasters of people who lived in different worlds. But every time he closed his eyes, he saw Sarah's face, heard the doctor's words. If only she'd told us sooner. So he came back. He rang the doorbell. And when Victoria answered, he saw immediately that she'd gotten worse. The suit was still perfect. Charcoal gray this time, paired with a silk blouse that probably cost more than his monthly rent. The hair was still styled, the makeup still flawless. But underneath the armor, she was crumbling. Her cheekbones stood out sharper. Her hands trembled as she held the door. Her eyes had that glassy, desperate shine he remembered too well. "Come in," she said, her voice hoarse. She cleared her throat. "Sorry, I've been on calls all day." Another lie. He could hear them now, could recognize the particular cadence of someone covering up truth with plausible fiction. "No problem, Ms. Hale," he said, wheeling his cart inside. The apartment still smelled like expensive candles and fresh flowers, but underneath it, that chemical sharpness had gotten stronger. "I'll start with the kitchen again." She nodded and walked toward her office, moving carefully, like someone navigating a room that wouldn't stay still. Daniel watched her go, counting the signs, the way she gripped the wall for support, the shallow breathing, the slight stagger in her gait. He got to work, but this time he paid attention differently. Not just to the surfaces he was cleaning, but to what those surfaces revealed. In the kitchen, he found a refrigerator full of takeout containers, none of them opened. Hundreds of dollars worth of food, going bad. In the bathroom, 4 new mint tins joined the collection in the trash. The medicine cabinet had been rearranged, bottles moved, labels turned inward so he couldn't read them. Someone was getting paranoid. Someone thought people were noticing. Daniel moved through the living room, dusting surfaces that barely needed it. Through the office's open door, he could see Victoria at her desk, staring at her laptop screen without moving. Just staring. He'd seen that before, too. Sarah sitting at the kitchen table, staring at nothing, trapped somewhere between consciousness and collapse. He was wiping down the coffee table when Victoria's phone rang. The sound shattered the silence, and she jumped like she'd been electrocuted. She answered on the 4th ring, her voice transforming instantly into something bright and energetic. "Marcus, hey!" "No, I'm not asleep. I was just reviewing the presentation for tomorrow." She laughed, and it sounded wrong, too loud, too forced. "You know me. I don't sleep when there's work to do." Daniel kept cleaning, but he listened. He'd learned a long time ago that people forgot service staff existed, talked around them like they were furniture. "The board meeting went great," Victoria continued, pacing now, her heels clicking against the hardwood. "Richardson had some concerns about the Q4 projections, but I walked him through the data. He's on board now." Another laugh. "Marcus, I've been doing this for 10 years. I know how to handle board members." She paused, listening. Daniel saw her free hand curl into a fist at her side. No, I'm fine, really, just tired. It's been a long week. Her voice had an edge now, defensive. I don't need a vacation. I need everyone to stop asking if I'm okay. I'm always okay. She hung up abruptly and stood very still in the middle of the office, staring at the phone in her hand like it was something foreign. Then she set it down carefully on the desk and sat back in her chair, her head dropping into her hands. Daniel looked away, focusing on a non-existent smudge on the table. He shouldn't have heard that. Shouldn't be here. Shouldn't care about a woman who had every resource in the world at her disposal and chose to destroy herself anyway. But caring wasn't something you chose. It was something that happened to you, whether you wanted it or not. He finished the living room and moved toward the bedroom wing, passing close enough to the office that Victoria looked up. Their eyes met for half a second, hers red-rimmed and exhausted, his probably too knowing, and something unspoken passed between them. An acknowledgement, maybe, or a warning. I'm sorry, she said suddenly, about the phone call. I didn't mean to be loud. Wasn't loud at all, ma'am, Daniel said. I barely heard it. Right. She didn't believe him. It's been a difficult week. A lot of pressure. I understand pressure. The words came out before he could stop them. Everybody's got their own kind. Victoria studied him for a moment, really looked at him for the first time since he'd started cleaning her apartment. What kind of pressure do you have? The question surprised him. He wasn't used to being asked about himself by clients, wasn't used to being seen as someone with a story worth hearing. The normal kind, he said carefully. Bills, raising a kid on my own, trying to make ends meet. You're a single father? Yes, ma'am, my son's 8. His name's Ethan. What happened to his mother? The question was direct, almost blunt. In another context, it might have been rude, but Victoria asked it like someone genuinely trying to understand, not just making conversation. Cancer, Daniel said. 2 years ago. Something flickered across Victoria's face. Pain, recognition, something raw and human beneath the professional mask. I'm sorry. That must have been hard, Daniel finished. It was hard. Still is. They stood there in the silence that followed, two people from completely different worlds connected by the universal language of loss. Then Victoria's phone buzzed again, and the moment shattered. She glanced at the screen and her jaw tightened. I should let you work, she said, turning back to her laptop. Thank you for asking. About the pressure. Sure thing, Ms. Hale. He moved on to the master bedroom, but the conversation stayed with him. She'd asked about Sarah, had actually cared, or at least performed caring well enough that it felt genuine. Maybe there was more to Victoria Hale than the polished facade. Maybe underneath the billion-dollar empire, she was just another person trying to survive. Or maybe she was just good at making people think that. The bedroom revealed more secrets. On the nightstand, 6 bottles of water, all half empty, none of them finished. A sleep mask pushed under the pillow. A book about meditation that looked brand new, unread. And on the floor beside the bed, hidden partially under the bed skirt, a small metal tin. Daniel bent to pick up what he thought was trash and realized it wasn't a mint tin. It was something else entirely. He knew what it was, had seen enough documentaries, enough news reports, enough cautionary tales. His hand closed around it and he stood there frozen, the evidence solid and damning in his palm. What are you doing? Victoria's voice came from the doorway, sharp and accusing. Daniel turned to find her standing there, her face pale, her eyes wide with something between fear and fury. I was just cleaning, Ms. Hale. Found this on the floor. He held out the tin. For a long moment, she just stared at it. Then she crossed the room in 4 quick strides and snatched it from his hand. That's mine, she said. It's private. I know what it is. Daniel kept his voice level, non-judgmental. I wasn't trying to... Weren't trying to what? Spy on me? Judge me? Her voice rose, cracking slightly. You don't know anything about my life, about what it takes to do what I do. You're right, Daniel said quietly. I don't, but I know what that does to people. I've seen it. Oh, have you? Victoria's laugh was bitter. Let me guess, you're going to tell me it's dangerous, that I should stop, that I need help. I wasn't going to tell you anything. It's not my place. No, it's not. She was shaking now, the tin clutched in her white-knuckled grip. It's not your place to be in my bedroom, touching my things, making assumptions about my life. You're here to clean. That's it. You're right, Daniel said again. He picked up his cleaning supplies and moved toward the door. I apologize, Ms. Hale. I was out of line. He was almost to the hallway when her voice stopped him. Wait. He turned. Victoria stood in the middle of the bedroom, the tin still in her hand, her professional armor completely gone. She looked young suddenly, vulnerable, like a scared kid caught doing something wrong. I'm sorry, she said. I shouldn't have snapped at you. You were just doing your job. It's okay. No, it's not. She sat down on the edge of the bed, still holding the tin. Nothing's okay, but I can't talk about this. Not with you, not with anyone. Daniel knew he should leave, should grab his cart and finish his shift and forget everything he'd seen. But he thought about Sarah again, about all the conversations they didn't have, all the times he'd let her deflect and avoid and pretend everything was fine. My wife didn't tell me how bad it was, he said. The cancer. She hid it for months because she didn't want to worry me, didn't want to be a burden. By the time she finally admitted she needed help, it was too late. Victoria looked up at him, tears shining in her eyes. I'm not saying your situation is the same, Daniel continued. I'm just saying, hiding things doesn't make them go away. It just makes them worse. And if telling the truth destroys everything I've built, then maybe what you've built isn't worth destroying yourself for. The words hung in the air between them. Victoria stared at him, and Daniel saw the war happening behind her eyes. The desperate desire to unburden herself fighting against years of self-preservation and calculated risk management. Finally, she looked away. I think you should finish and go. I won't report this conversation to your supervisor, but I think it's best if someone else handles my apartment from now on. Yes, ma'am. Daniel headed for the door, then paused. For what it's worth, Ms. Hale, you don't have to do this alone. Whatever it is you're carrying. He left before she could respond, finishing the rest of the apartment in silence. Victoria never emerged from the bedroom. When he let himself out 40 minutes later, he could see the light under her door, could hear the faint sound of crying. The elevator ride down felt longer than usual. Daniel leaned against the wall and wondered if he'd just made everything worse, if he'd crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed, if Victoria Hale would spend the next week doubling down on her secrets out of spite, or fear, or pride. His phone buzzed as he reached the ground floor. A text from his supervisor, Janet. Ms. Hale from Zenith 4302 requested you specifically for her future cleanings. Said you were professional and thorough. Nice work. Daniel stared at the message, surprised. She hadn't fired him, hadn't reported him, had actually requested him back. Maybe she was more ready for help than she'd let on. Or maybe she was just good at keeping up appearances even with a cleaning man who'd seen too much. The next week, Daniel returned to the 43rd floor. This time, Victoria was waiting for him in the living room when he arrived. She looked better, showered, dressed in casual clothes instead of a suit, her hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. But the circles under her eyes had darkened and her hand still shook slightly when she opened the door. I wasn't sure you'd come back, she said. Your apartment's on my route. Right. She stepped aside to let him in. I wanted to apologize for last week. I wasn't myself. Daniel wheeled his cart inside and met her eyes. Ms. Hale, you don't owe me an apology. I overstepped. Maybe, but you also... She trailed off, searching for words. You saw something no one else sees, and you didn't run away screaming or call a tabloid. Not really my style. A ghost of a smile crossed her face. I did some research on you. I hope that's not creepy. What kind of research? The background check kind. My security team ran it. She had the grace to look embarrassed. I know it's invasive, but I needed to know. I needed to know if I could trust you. And can you? You worked as an EMT for 12 years before your wife got sick. You left to take care of her full time. After she died, you've been working 3 jobs to support your son. You've never missed a payment on anything, never been arrested, never even gotten a speeding ticket. Victoria rattled off the facts like she was reading a resume. You're either the most boring person in Los Angeles or the most reliable. I prefer reliable. Me too. She sat down on the couch, suddenly looking exhausted. That's why I want to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me. Daniel set down his supplies and waited. How bad do I look? Victoria asked. And don't give me some polite answer. I need the truth. He studied her carefully, the way he'd studied trauma victims and ambulances, assessing vitals and damage with brutal honesty because lies killed people. You look like someone who hasn't slept in days, he said finally. You've lost weight. Your hands shake. Your pupils are dilated even though it's nighttime. You're breathing shallow, and you've got a persistent cough you're trying to hide. He paused. You look like someone who's running on empty and won't admit the tank's dry. Victoria absorbed this without flinching. How much longer do you think I have before someone else notices? I'd say people already have noticed. They're just not saying anything. Because I'm good at making them not say anything. She laughed, but there was no humor in it. I've spent 10 years perfecting the art of being untouchable. Turns out I'm so good at it, no one can reach me even when I'm drowning. You could reach out. You could ask for help. From who? My board? They'd force me out the second they thought I was weak. My investors? They'd pull their money. The press? They'd eat me alive. She shook her head. There's no help for people like me. There's just endurance. What about friends? Family? I have business associates and professional relationships. I haven't had actual friends since college. Victoria's voice was a matter of fact, like she was describing someone else's life. My parents died when I was 23. Car accident. No siblings. No cousins I talk to. It's just me. That's a lonely way to live. It's the only way I know how to live anymore. She looked at him directly. You want to know why I requested you come back? Because you're the first person in 5 years who's looked at me like I'm a human being instead of a brand. And I'm so tired of being a brand. Daniel sat down in the chair across from her, abandoning any pretense of being there to clean. What do you need, Ms. Hale? I don't know. Her voice cracked. I know I need to stop. I know what I'm doing is killing me, but I don't know how to stop and still be her. Victoria Hale. The woman who built an empire. The woman who never fails. Maybe she needs to fail. Victoria looked at him like he'd suggested she jump off the balcony. Maybe, Daniel continued, the woman who never fails isn't a real person. Maybe she's a character you've been playing for so long, you forgot there was someone else underneath. And what if there's nothing underneath? Victoria's eyes were bright with unshed tears. What if I've played the role so long that it's all I am? What if I stop and I disappear? Then you disappear. And maybe that's okay. Maybe the person who comes back is someone worth knowing. She was crying now, silently, tears streaming down her face while her body stayed perfectly still. I don't know how to do that. I don't know how to be anything other than this. Start small, Daniel said. Start with one day. One choice. One moment of not being her. And then what? And then tomorrow you make the same choice. And the day after that. Until eventually you've built something new. Victoria wiped her eyes, smearing mascara across her cheeks. For the first time since Daniel had met her, she looked truly young. A scared woman in her 30s instead of an ageless corporate entity. Would you help me? She asked quietly. I know it's not your job, and I know it's asking too much, but I don't have anyone else. And I think if I try to do this alone, I'll fail. And if I fail, I'll die. Daniel thought about his son asleep on the couch, about the bills stacked on his kitchen counter, about all the reasons he should say no. Then he thought about Sarah, and the conversation they never had, and the help he never offered because he didn't want to intrude. I'll help, he said, but you have to be honest with me. No more hiding. No more pretending you're fine when you're not. Okay, Victoria took a shaky breath. Okay, I can do that. And you have to see a doctor, a real one, not someone you're paying to not ask questions. I don't know any real doctors. I don't even have a primary care physician. Then we'll find one. Tomorrow. First thing. I have meetings tomorrow. A full day of... Cancel them. Victoria stared at him. I can't just cancel. Yes, you can. You're the CEO. You can do whatever you want. And what you need to do tomorrow is take care of yourself. For a long moment, she didn't respond. Then, slowly, she nodded. Okay, I'll cancel them. Marcus is going to have a heart attack, but okay. Good. Daniel stood up. Now I'm going to clean your apartment and you're going to go to bed. Real sleep, not just lying there staring at the ceiling. I can't sleep without... She stopped herself. Without what you've been taking, I know, but tonight you're going to try anyway. And if you can't sleep, that's okay. Just rest. Victoria stood up, unsteady on her feet. Why are you doing this? You don't owe me anything. I'm just some rich person you clean for. You're a person who needs help, Daniel said simply. That's enough. She looked at him for a long moment, something shifting in her expression. Gratitude, maybe, or relief, or the desperate hope of someone drowning who'd finally spotted a life raft. Thank you, she whispered. Don't thank me yet. This is going to be hard. Harder than anything you've done before. Harder than building $1 billion company? Harder than that. Because this time you have to be honest, and honesty's a lot scarier than money. Victoria smiled. A real smile this time, small but genuine. Yeah, it really is. She went to bed, and Daniel cleaned the apartment slowly, methodically, thinking about what he'd just committed to. Thinking about the risks and the complications, and the impossibility of a cleaning man helping a billionaire confront her demons. But mostly thinking about Sarah, and about second chances, and about how sometimes the people who need help most are the ones who've convinced everyone they don't need anything at all. When he finished and locked the door behind him, it was almost 3 a.m. The city was quiet, the streets empty except for the occasional car passing below. Daniel stood in the hallway for a moment, looking at the closed door of apartment 4302, wondering what happened next. Inside, Victoria Hale lay in her bed, staring at the ceiling, fighting every instinct that screamed at her to reach for the tin hidden in her nightstand drawer. Her body ached. Her mind raced. Her hands wouldn't stop shaking, but she didn't reach for it. Not tonight. Tonight, she just lay there in the dark, scared and sick and more alone than she'd ever been. And for the first time in 5 years, she let herself feel it. The call came at 6:47 a.m., jarring Daniel awake from the 2 hours of sleep he'd managed to grab after his shift. He fumbled for his phone, squinting at the bright screen, and saw a number he didn't recognize. Hello? Daniel? Victoria's voice was barely a whisper, hoarse and trembling. I can't do this. I thought I could, but I can't. Everything hurts and I can't breathe right, and I keep thinking I'm going to die, and... Hey, slow down! Daniel sat up, immediately alert despite the exhaustion. Across the room, Ethan was still asleep, curled up under his dinosaur comforter. Where are you right now? Bathroom floor. I've been here for 3 hours. I tried to sleep like you said, but my heart won't stop racing, and I threw up twice, and... Her breath hitched. I'm scared. I'm really scared. Okay, that's okay. Being scared is normal. Daniel kept his voice calm, falling back into his EMT training. I need you to tell me what you took last night. Did you use anything? No, nothing. That's the problem. I didn't take anything, and now my body's... It's like it's punishing me for stopping. Withdrawal. Daniel closed his eyes. He should have anticipated this, should have known her body wouldn't just let her quit cold turkey after years of use. Listen to me, Victoria. What you're feeling is your body adjusting. It's going to be rough for a few days, but it won't kill you, okay? I need you to trust me on that. It feels like it's killing me. I know, but you're going to get through it. He glanced at the clock. Ethan's alarm would go off in 30 minutes. Can you stand up? Get to your bed? I think so. Good. Do that. Lie down, get under the covers. Sometimes the shaking feels better when you're warm. He heard rustling, footsteps, then the sound of her collapsing onto the bed with a small groan. Okay, she said. I'm here. Now breathe with me. In for 4 counts, out for 4 counts. Can you do that? I'll try. They breathed together for 5 minutes, Daniel counting steadily while Victoria's breathing slowly evened out. When she spoke again, her voice was stronger. I'm sorry. I know it's early. I didn't know who else to call. Don't apologize. This is what getting better looks like. It's messy and it's hard and it means calling people at weird hours. Is this what it was like? With your wife? Daniel paused, memories flooding back. Different circumstances, same fear. She'd call me from the hospital at 3 a.m. just to hear my voice, said it made the pain more bearable. I'm not dying, though. I'm just dramatic. You're not dramatic. You're in pain. There's a difference. A long silence stretched between them. Then Victoria said, I canceled everything today. Marcus thinks I have the flu. He wanted to send a doctor to the apartment, but I told him I just needed rest. Good. That's good. So now what? I just lie here and feel terrible? For today? Yeah, pretty much. Your body needs time to reset. Tomorrow, we'll figure out the next steps. You said I need to see a doctor. You do, but not when you're in the middle of withdrawal. Let's get you stabilized first. How long will that take? Honestly, could be a few days, could be a week. Everyone's different. He heard her breath catch. A week? Daniel, I can't just disappear for a week. The board will notice. The press will start asking questions. I have a product launch in 10 days that I've been planning for 6 months. Then you're going to have to decide what's more important, your image or your life. That's not fair. No, it's not. But it's the truth. Another silence. Daniel could hear Ethan stirring across the room, the soft sounds of a child waking up. He needed to get breakfast started, pack lunch, make sure his son got to school on time. But Victoria was still on the line, and he couldn't just hang up on someone in crisis. I have to go, he said finally. My son's waking up, but I want you to promise me something. What? Promise me you won't use today, no matter how bad it gets, no matter how much you want to. Just get through today. And then what? Then tomorrow you promise me the same thing. One day at a time, Victoria. That's how this works. Okay. Her voice was small. One day at a time. I'll check on you tonight, after my shift. Will you be okay until then? I don't know, but I'll try. Daniel hung up and sat for a moment, processing what he'd just agreed to. He was now officially involved in the private medical crisis of one of the wealthiest women in California, with no training in addiction treatment and no idea what he was doing. This could blow up in his face in about 100 different ways. Dad? Ethan's voice came from across the room. Who are you talking to? Just a friend who needed help, buddy. Come on, let's get some breakfast. As he made scrambled eggs and packed Ethan's lunch, Daniel's mind kept returning to Victoria alone in that massive penthouse, fighting a battle no one else knew about. He thought about calling a professional, finding her a therapist or a treatment center, or someone actually qualified to help. But he'd seen the fear in her eyes, heard the desperation in her voice. She'd reached out to him because she trusted him, and breaking that trust might send her right back to the thing that was killing her. So he'd figure it out. Somehow. The day crawled by. Daniel tried to sleep after dropping Ethan at school, but his mind wouldn't shut off. He kept checking his phone, expecting another call, another crisis. Instead, there was nothing. Radio silence from the 43rd floor. By 3 p.m., when he picked Ethan up, Daniel was wound so tight he could barely focus on his son's chatter about the math test and the fight at recess. He made dinner on autopilot, helped with homework mechanically, and kept glancing at his phone every 30 seconds. At 8 p.m., he finally broke and called her. Victoria answered on the first ring. I'm still here. How are you feeling? Like I got hit by a truck, but I'm still here. I didn't use. That's good. That's really good. Is it? Because I feel like death, and I keep thinking about how easy it would be to just not feel like this anymore. I know, but you're doing the hard thing. You're fighting. I'm not sure fighting is the right word. More like surviving, barely. Daniel could hear the exhaustion in her voice, bone deep and total. Have you eaten anything today? No. The thought of food makes me want to throw up. You need to eat something, even just toast. Your body needs fuel. I know what my body needs, and it's not toast. The bitterness in her tone was sharp enough to cut. Daniel took a breath. reminding himself that this was the addiction talking, not Victoria. "I'm coming over," he said. "What? No, you don't have to. I have my son with me, and my shift doesn't start until 11, but I'm coming over. You shouldn't be alone right now." "Daniel, really, I'm fine. I don't need Victoria." He cut her off gently. "Stop trying to be fine. Let someone help you." A pause. Then quietly, "Okay." An hour later, Daniel stood outside apartment 4302 with Ethan beside him, carrying a bag of groceries and wondering if this was the worst idea he'd ever had. Bringing his 8-year-old son to a billionaire's penthouse while she went through withdrawal probably violated several parenting guidelines and possibly a few laws, but Ethan's regular babysitter was sick, and Daniel couldn't leave Victoria alone. Not tonight. The door opened before he could knock. Victoria stood there in sweatpants and an oversized Stanford hoodie, her hair pulled back in a messy bun, no makeup, looking more human than Daniel had ever seen her. Her eyes went immediately to Ethan. "Hi," she said softly. "You must be Ethan." Ethan, for once, was speechless. He stared up at the apartment with wide eyes, taking in the floor-to-ceiling windows, the art on the walls, the city lights spreading out below them like a second sky. "This is Ms. Hale," Daniel said, "the client I've been telling you about." "You live here?" Ethan breathed. "This is like Batman's house." Victoria laughed, a real, genuine laugh that transformed her whole face. "It's a little less exciting than Batman's house. No Batcave, unfortunately." "Do you have a butler like Alfred?" "No butler, just a cleaning service." She smiled at Daniel. "A very good cleaning service." Daniel held up the grocery bag. "I brought soup, the kind you can actually keep down." "You didn't have to do that." "Yeah, I did." "Come on, let's get some food in you." They moved into the kitchen, Ethan running ahead to press his face against the windows, marveling at the view. Victoria sat at the kitchen island while Daniel heated up the soup, moving through her space with the familiarity of someone who'd cleaned it a dozen times. "I'm sorry about this," Victoria said. "About him seeing me like this? I'm sure this isn't what you had in mind for his evening." "He's seen worse. He watched his mom go through chemo. He knows what sick looks like." "Still, I bet you didn't plan on your Tuesday night involving babysitting a grown woman who can't handle her own problems." "Nobody plans for the hard stuff. It just happens, and you deal with it." Daniel set a bowl of soup in front of her. "Now eat. Small bites." Victoria picked up the spoon with shaking hands and managed a few sips. The warmth seemed to help, color returning slowly to her face. "Dad," Ethan called from the windows. "Can I see Miss Hale's view?" "If it's okay with Ms. Hale." "It's okay," Victoria said. "And Ethan, you can call me Victoria. Ms. Hale makes me feel ancient." Ethan bounded over, full of 8-year-old energy. "Victoria, do you have any games? Dad says I have to be quiet, but I finished my homework, and I have some board games in the closet," Victoria said. "Top shelf. Chess, Scrabble, some others. You're welcome to any of them." "Really?" Ethan looked at his dad for confirmation. "Really," Daniel said. "But you set them up in the living room and you're quiet, okay? Victoria doesn't feel well." "I'll be super quiet, promise." Ethan disappeared into the living room, and soon Daniel could hear the sound of game boxes being opened. Victoria managed another few spoonfuls of soup before pushing the bowl away. "That's all I can do right now." "That's okay. You got some down. That's progress." She looked at him, really looked at him, her eyes searching his face. "Why are you doing this? And don't say it's because I need help. Lots of people need help. You don't show up at their apartments with soup and your kid." Daniel considered the question. He could give her the easy answer, the noble one about paying forward kindness or helping those in need. But Victoria had asked for honesty, and she deserved it. "Because I failed my wife," he said finally. "I saw the signs that something was wrong, and I let her convince me she was fine. I let her hide her pain because it was easier than confronting it, and by the time I pushed past her defenses, it was too late." He met her eyes. "I can't save Sarah, but maybe I can help you, and maybe that makes some of the guilt a little easier to carry." Victoria's eyes filled with tears. "That's a lot of weight to put on a stranger. You're not a stranger anymore. You called me at 6 a.m. because you were scared. That makes us something. What? What does it make us? I don't know. Friends, maybe. Or just two people trying to survive. Daniel smiled slightly. Does it matter? I guess not. Victoria wiped her eyes. I just don't want to be your redemption project. I don't want you helping me because of something that happened with your wife. I'm not. I'm helping you because you asked, because you're trying, because you're here eating soup even though it makes you nauseous, and you haven't used even though every cell in your body is screaming at you to. He paused. That takes courage, and courage is worth supporting. From the living room, Ethan called out, Dad, can you come play Scrabble with me? Victoria looks too tired. Daniel glanced at Victoria, who nodded. Go. I'll just sit here and try not to throw up your soup. That's the spirit. He joined Ethan on the floor, setting up the Scrabble board on the coffee table that probably cost more than Daniel's car. Victoria stayed in the kitchen for a few minutes, then slowly made her way to the couch, curling up in the corner with a blanket. They played quietly, Ethan's 7-letter words competing with Daniel's strategic blocking, and gradually Victoria's breathing evened out. Daniel glanced over to find her asleep, the first real sleep she'd probably gotten in days. Is she okay? Ethan whispered. Yeah, buddy, she's just very tired. Like Mom was? Daniel's hand stilled over his tile rack. A little bit, but different. Is she going to die too? The question hit Daniel in the chest. Ethan had learned too young that adults didn't always get better, that sick sometimes meant gone forever. Not if I can help it, Daniel said. Victoria's sick, but she's fighting, and we're going to help her fight. Okay? Ethan studied his tiles. She seems nice. Sad, but nice. Yeah, she is. They finished the game. Ethan won by 30 points, and by then it was almost 10 p.m. Daniel needed to get Ethan home and get to his shift, but he hesitated, looking at Victoria asleep on the couch. I don't want to leave her, he said quietly. Then don't, Ethan said simply. Can't you call in sick? It's not that easy, bud. We need the money. But she needs you more. Daniel looked at his son, so wise and compassionate for 8 years old, and made a decision that probably violated every professional boundary ever created. He texted his supervisor. Family emergency. Can't make tonight's shift. I'm sorry. The response came quickly. Everything okay? Will be. Just need to be somewhere else tonight. Okay. But Daniel, this is your second call out this month. Can't make it a habit. Understood. Thank you. He pocketed his phone and turned to Ethan. Come on, let's get you set up on the other couch. Looks like we're having a sleepover. In a billionaire's penthouse? Cool. Daniel got Ethan settled with pillows and an extra blanket Victoria kept in the linen closet, then dimmed the lights and sat in the chair between the two couches, watching over them both. Ethan fell asleep quickly, exhausted from the excitement. Victoria slept fitfully, twitching and muttering, trapped in dreams that Daniel could only imagine. Around 2 a.m., she woke with a gasp. Hey, Daniel said softly. You're okay. You're safe. Victoria oriented herself slowly, looking around the dark apartment. Did I fall asleep? For about 4 hours. That's good. Why are you still here? And Ethan, we're staying tonight. Didn't feel right leaving you alone. Daniel, you can't just... You have work, and your son has school tomorrow, and you need someone here. So we're here. His tone left no room for argument. Go back to sleep. Or try to, anyway. Victoria pulled the blanket tighter around herself. I can't remember the last time someone stayed with me. Through the night, I mean. It's been years. That's a lonely way to live. It's the only way I know. She was quiet for a moment. When I built the company, I thought success would fill all the empty spaces. Thought if I just achieved enough, earned enough, proved enough, I'd never feel alone again. She laughed bitterly. Turns out you can be surrounded by thousands of employees and still feel like you're the only person in the world. What changed? When did it start? Victoria was silent for so long Daniel thought she'd fallen back asleep. Then she said, 5 years ago, right after the IPO. Everyone was celebrating, and I was standing in a room full of people who'd made millions off my company, and all I could think was, is this it? Is this what I sacrificed everything for? What did you sacrifice? Everything. Relationships, health, any chance at a normal life. I haven't been on a date in 3 years. Haven't seen a movie in a theater in 5 years. Haven't taken a vacation that wasn't a work conference since I was 25. Her voice cracked. I gave up being human to become successful, and somewhere along the way, I forgot how to be anything else. You're still human. You're just buried under a lot of other stuff. How do I dig myself out? One day at a time, one choice at a time, starting with not using today. I didn't use today. I know. I'm proud of you. The words seemed to startle her. No one said that to me in years. Then people around you aren't paying attention. Victoria wiped her eyes. Will you tell me about her? Your wife? Daniel leaned back in the chair, memories washing over him. Her name was Sarah. We met in high school, got married too young, had Ethan even younger. She was a teacher, 2nd grade, loved those kids like they were her own. He smiled, remembering. She had this laugh that could light up a whole room. Even when she was sick, even when the chemo made her so weak she could barely stand, she'd find something to laugh about. You must miss her terribly. Every day, but I'm grateful too. Grateful I had her at all, even if it wasn't for as long as I wanted. I've never had that, Victoria said quietly. That kind of love. The kind worth missing. You could. Not the life I've built. There's no room for it. Then maybe you need to build a different life. She looked at him in the darkness, city lights painting her face in shades of gold and shadow. I don't know how to do that. I've been Victoria Hale for so long, I don't remember who I was before. So find out. That's what this is about, isn't it? Finding the person underneath the brand. What if she's not worth finding? Then at least you'll know, but I don't think that's true. I think the woman who called me this morning, scared and honest and asking for help, that woman is worth finding. That woman is brave. Victoria started crying then, really crying, the kind of tears that came from years of holding everything in. Daniel moved to the couch and sat beside her, and she leaned against him, sobbing into his shoulder while he held her the way he'd held Ethan through nightmares, steady and solid and safe. I'm so tired, she whispered between sobs. I'm so tired of pretending, so tired of being strong, so tired of everything. I know, but you don't have to be strong right now. You just have to be here. They sat like that for a long time, Victoria crying and Daniel holding her, while across the room Ethan slept, and the city lights burned, and somewhere below them millions of people lived their lives unaware that in a penthouse 43 floors up, a billionaire was finally letting herself fall apart. When the tears finally stopped, Victoria pulled back, embarrassed. I'm sorry, Don't apologize. You needed that. I got your shirt all wet. I have other shirts. She laughed, a watery sound. You're a good person, Daniel Brooks. I'm just a person, same as you. No? She shook her head. You're better. You show up, you stay. You don't run away when things get hard. Neither do you. You're still here, aren't you? Still fighting. Barely. Barely counts. Daniel stood up, checking on Ethan, who'd slept through everything. It's almost 3 a.m. You should try to sleep again. Will you stay, just for tonight? I'm not going anywhere. Victoria lay back down, pulling the blanket over herself. Daniel? Yeah? Thank you for seeing me. The real me. That's the only version worth seeing. She closed her eyes, and this time when sleep came, it was deeper, steadier. Daniel returned to his chair and kept watch through the rest of the night, guardian to 2 sleeping people who needed him in different ways. As dawn broke over Los Angeles, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, Daniel thought about the strange turns life took. A month ago, Victoria Hale had been just another client, another apartment to clean. Now she was someone he was fighting for, someone whose survival had somehow become tangled up with his own redemption. It was messy and complicated and probably doomed to end badly, but it was also real. And real was something both of them had been missing for far too long. If you or someone you know is having a difficult time, free support is available. Find resources. Morning came with Ethan's voice cutting through the quiet. Dad, I'm going to be late for school. Daniel jerked awake, his neck stiff from sleeping in the chair. Sunlight streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows, harsh and unforgiving. Victoria was still asleep on the couch, curled into a tight ball under the blanket. He checked his watch, 7:23 a.m. "I know, buddy. Come on, let's get you home." He stood, every joint protesting, and grabbed their things. Before leaving, he scribbled a note on the back of a grocery receipt and left it on the coffee table. "Had to take Ethan to school. I'll call you later. You did good yesterday. Keep going. D." They made it home with 15 minutes to spare. Daniel threw together a rushed breakfast, helped Ethan change clothes, and got him to school just as the bell rang. Then he drove home and collapsed into his own bed, setting an alarm for noon. He needed to sleep, needed to recover, but his mind wouldn't stop replaying the night. Victoria's tears, her confession, the weight of her loneliness. The alarm felt like it went off seconds after he closed his eyes. Daniel dragged himself up, showered, and called Victoria. She answered on the second ring, her voice stronger than yesterday. "I thought maybe you'd given up on me." "Not a chance. How are you feeling?" "Like I spent the night crying on a stranger's shoulder, embarrassed mostly." "Don't be. That took courage." "Courage?" She laughed without humor. "Is that what we're calling complete emotional breakdown now? When it's honest?" "Yeah." Daniel poured himself coffee, black and strong. "Have you eaten anything today?" "Toast, half a piece. It's progress." "It is. I'm proud of you." There was a pause, and when Victoria spoke again, her voice was softer. "You keep saying that, like you mean it." "I do mean it. I don't know how to accept that." "Praise from you, I mean. You're not trying to get anything from me. You're not positioning for a promotion or angling for investment. You just say things because they're true. That's generally how honesty works." "Not in my world," she sighed. "Marcus called 4 times this morning. The board is getting nervous. Apparently a tech CEO disappearing for 2 days triggers all kinds of speculation." "What did you tell him?" "That I have the flu and I'll be back tomorrow. He's sending a care package, gourmet soup, expensive tea, probably some kind of superfood situation." "Will you be ready to go back tomorrow?" The silence stretched long enough that Daniel thought the call had dropped. Then Victoria said, "I don't know. I don't know if I can put the mask back on yet, but I don't know if I have a choice either." "You always have a choice." "Do I?" "Because from where I'm sitting, it feels like I'm trapped. If I take more time, I risk everything I've built. If I go back too soon, I risk using again just to get through the day." Daniel leaned against his kitchen counter, searching for the right words. "When Sarah was sick, she had this thing she'd say when the treatment got really bad. She'd tell me, 'I just have to get through the next 5 minutes, then the next 5 after that.' She broke everything down into pieces small enough to survive. 5 minutes at a time. 5 minutes at a time. So here's what you do tomorrow. You get through the first meeting, just that one, then you reassess. If you can handle another meeting, you take it. If you can't, you go home. No shame in that." "There's always shame in weakness. That's the first rule of Silicon Valley." "Then Silicon Valley's got it wrong." Victoria laughed, and this time it sounded almost real. "You know what the ironic thing is? I spent years teaching myself not to need anyone, not to depend on anyone, to be completely self-sufficient. And now the only thing keeping me from using is knowing I'd disappoint you." "That's not a bad thing, isn't it? What happens when you're not there? When I'm alone at 3 a.m. and the cravings hit and there's no one to call?" "Then you call me anyway. I don't care what time it is." "Daniel, you can't be on call 24/7. You have your own life, your son, your jobs." "Yeah, well, right now this is part of my life too. We'll figure out a longer-term solution, but for now, you call me when you need to. Deal?" "You're either the kindest person I've ever met or completely insane." "Probably a little of both." They talked for another 20 minutes, Daniel walking her through breathing exercises and distraction techniques, things he'd learned during Sarah's treatment. When they finally hung up, Daniel felt the weight of what he'd taken on settle more heavily on his shoulders. He was a cleaning man with no medical training, trying to help a billionaire through withdrawal. The absurdity of it would have been funny if the stakes weren't so high. His phone rang again almost immediately. His supervisor, Janet. "Daniel, we need to talk about last night." "I know. I'm sorry. It won't happen again." That's what you said last time. Look, I like you and your work is excellent, but I can't have people calling out at the last minute. It leaves the clients unhappy and the schedule in chaos. I understand. It was a genuine emergency. With Ms. Hale? Janet's tone shifted, curious now. She called me this morning, asked specifically about your schedule, said she wants to adjust her cleaning time to accommodate your availability. Daniel's heart sank. Victoria was trying to help, but she didn't understand that special treatment would only make things more complicated. She doesn't need to do that. Maybe not, but she's doing it anyway. She's also increasing her service contract. Wants you there 5 nights a week instead of 1. Janet paused. Daniel, what's going on? And before you say nothing, remember I've been doing this for 15 years. I know when a client gets attached. It's not like that. She needs extra help right now, going through some stuff. Personal stuff? Yeah. And you're helping her with it? Trying to. Janet sighed. Be careful, Daniel. Rich people's problems have a way of swallowing up regular people's lives. You've got Ethan to think about. I know, I'm being careful. I hope so. I'd hate to see you get hurt. She softened. But since she's paying for 5 nights and specifically requesting you, I can give you the Zenith Tower exclusively. Drop your other buildings. It'll actually be easier on your schedule. You sure? I'm sure. Just promise me you know what you're doing. Daniel thought about Victoria crying on his shoulder, about her shaking hands and desperate courage, about how close she was to either recovery or collapse. Honestly, Janet, I have no idea what I'm doing, but I'm doing it anyway. That's either very brave or very stupid. Like I said, probably both. That night, Daniel returned to the 43rd floor with a new sense of purpose. This wasn't just a cleaning job anymore. This was a mission, whether he'd chosen it or not. Victoria answered the door looking better, showered, dressed in real clothes instead of sweats, her hair styled. But Daniel could see the effort it had taken, could read the exhaustion in the tight lines around her eyes. 5 nights a week, he said as she let him in. That's a little excessive, don't you think? I need the help, and you need the money. It works out. Victoria, you can't just throw money at this. Why not? It's literally the only thing I'm good at. She walked to the windows, arms crossed. Besides, it's not charity. You'll actually clean. I'm just ensuring you're here more often, for accountability. Accountability. Someone needs to keep me honest. Might as well be you. Daniel set down his supplies and joined her at the windows. The city stretched out below them, millions of lights beginning to spark to life as dusk faded into night. How was today? Really? Hard. I almost used 3 times. Once in the morning when I couldn't get my hands to stop shaking enough to put on eyeliner. Once at lunch when Marcus made a joke about me looking tired. And once around 4 p.m. for no reason at all except that I could. But you didn't. But I didn't. She turned to face him. I kept thinking about what you said. 5 minutes at a time. I got through breakfast. Then I got through getting dressed. Then I got through answering emails. By the time I realized I'd made it through the whole day, it was too late to use, even if I'd wanted to. That's exactly how it works. It's exhausting. Being this aware of every choice, every moment. It gets easier. When? Daniel thought about Sarah's recovery from the pain medication after her first surgery, how long it had taken for her to stop counting days. Honestly, months, maybe longer, but it does get easier. Victoria's face fell. Months. I have to feel like this for months. You have to fight for months. But you won't feel like this the whole time. It gets a little better each week, a little less intense, a little more manageable. I don't know if I can do months. You don't have to. You just have to do today. Tomorrow you'll worry about tomorrow. They stood in silence, watching the city lights multiply. Finally, Victoria said, I need to tell you something about why I started, about what I'm really running from. Okay? She moved to the couch and sat down, and Daniel followed. When she spoke, her voice was distant, like she was recounting someone else's story. My parents died in a car crash when I was 23. I was supposed to be in the car with them, but I stayed late at the library working on my thesis. They were picking me up, and a drunk driver ran a red light. She stared at her hands. The last thing my mom said to me was, hurry up, we're hungry. I told her to give me 10 more minutes. Those 10 minutes saved my life and ended theirs. Daniel stayed quiet, letting her find her way through the memory. After the funeral, everyone kept telling me how strong I was, how brave, how I was handling everything so well. Victoria's laugh was bitter. I wasn't handling anything. I was drowning. But I'd learned that if you look put together enough, people stop asking if you're okay. They just assume you are. So you built walls. I built an empire. Threw myself into my work because work had rules and logic and outcomes I could control. People can't leave you if you never let them close enough to matter. Things can't fall apart if you're holding them together through sheer force of will. And the drugs? Started as performance enhancement. Everyone in tech uses something. Adderall, modafinil, microdosing psychedelics. It's practically expected if you want to keep up with the 20-year-olds who can code for 48 hours straight. She picked at her cuticle. But then it became less about performing better and more about just performing at all. About getting through another day of being Victoria Hale when I was so tired of being her. Who do you want to be instead? The question seemed to catch her off guard. I don't know. I don't think I've ever asked myself that. I've always just been whoever I needed to be to succeed, to prove I wasn't broken by what happened, to show everyone that Victoria Hale doesn't fall apart. Except you are falling apart. You have been for years. I know. Her voice cracked. And I'm terrified that if I stop holding it all together, there won't be anything left, that I'm just an empty shell with good branding. Daniel reached over and took her hand. You're not empty. You're exhausted. There's a difference. How do you know? Because empty people don't fight. They don't call for help at 6 a.m. They don't stay awake all night resisting the thing that would make the pain stop. He squeezed her hand. You're fighting, Victoria. That means there's something in there worth saving. Tears spilled down her cheeks. What if I can't find it? What if I've been pretending so long that the real me is just gone? Then we'll figure out who you want to become. But I don't think that's true. I think the real you is the woman who cried on my shoulder last night, who admitted she was scared, who's sitting here right now being honest even though it terrifies her. I hate being this vulnerable. I know, but vulnerability isn't weakness. It's the only way to actually connect with people. Victoria wiped her eyes. Is this what you did with your wife? Talk her through everything? Sarah didn't need much talking through. She was braver than me. But yeah, we talked. A lot. Especially near the end when we both knew time was running out. Daniel's throat tightened. She made me promise I wouldn't shut down after she died, that I'd stay open to people, to life, to possibility. Have you kept that promise? I'm trying. Some days are better than others. Is this, Victoria gestured between them, is this part of keeping that promise, helping me? Daniel considered the question. Maybe. Or maybe I'm just doing what feels right. Does it matter? I guess not. She smiled, small but genuine. I'm glad you're here. That's all I know. They sat together as darkness fully claimed the sky, talking about easier things, Ethan's school play, a movie Victoria hadn't seen, the absurd price of parking in Los Angeles. Normal conversation between two people who were becoming something resembling friends, though neither of them had quite figured out what that meant yet. Around 10 p.m., Victoria's phone buzzed. She glanced at it and groaned. Marcus, reminding me about tomorrow's 8 a.m. meeting with the board. Are you ready for it? No, but I'll do it anyway. She looked at Daniel. Will you be here tomorrow night? After? I'll be here. Good. I might need someone to talk to after putting the mask back on all day. Then I'll be here to help you take it off. The words hung between them, more intimate than Daniel had intended. Victoria's eyes met his, and something shifted in the air. An acknowledgement of how close they'd become in such a short time, how unusual their relationship was, how much trust she'd placed in a man she barely knew. Daniel, she said quietly, thank you for not running away, for not judging, for just being here. You don't have to thank me. I do, though, because you didn't have to do any of this. You chose to, and that choice might have saved my life. Daniel felt the weight of those words settle over him. He'd come to clean an apartment and somehow ended up responsible for keeping someone alive. It should have felt like too much, like a burden he hadn't signed up for. Instead, it felt right, like this was exactly where he was supposed to be. The days that followed fell into a new rhythm. Daniel came to the penthouse every night, cleaning but mostly just being present. Victoria went back to work, white-knuckling her way through meetings and presentations, then coming home to collapse on the couch and tell Daniel about her day. About the close calls, the moments she'd wanted to give up, the small victories of making it through another 8 hours without using. "I locked myself in my office bathroom today," she told him on Thursday, her 5th day clean. "Just stared at myself in the mirror for 10 minutes, arguing with my reflection about whether anyone would notice if I used just once." "What convinced you not to?" "I imagined having to tell you I'd failed, and I couldn't do it, couldn't stand the thought of disappointing you." "You need to find better reasons than that. Reasons that come from you, not from me." "I'm working on it, but for now, not disappointing you is enough." By the second week, Victoria's physical symptoms had started to ease. The shaking decreased. The nausea faded. She started eating real meals instead of just toast and soup. But the psychological battle intensified. Without the drugs to numb everything, she felt every emotion at full volume, the anxiety, the grief, the crushing loneliness she'd been medicating away for years. "I don't know how to do this," she said one night, pacing the penthouse like a caged animal. "How to just feel everything. It's too much. It's overwhelming." "Then don't feel it all at once. Pick one emotion. Just one. Let yourself experience it fully, then move on." "Which one?" "Your choice." Victoria stopped pacing and closed her eyes. When she opened them, they were filled with rage. "I'm angry. I'm so angry at myself for letting it get this bad, for being weak, for needing drugs to function, for wasting years of my life running from pain instead of dealing with it." "Okay, so be angry. That's allowed." "Is it?" "Because I don't remember the last time I let myself be angry. I'm supposed to be measured, professional, in control." "You're in your own home. You can be whatever you want." Victoria picked up a decorative pillow from the couch and threw it across the room. It hit the wall with a soft thump, completely anticlimactic. She laughed despite herself. "That's it? That's anger?" "Try a different approach." Daniel stood up. "Come on, we're going to the balcony." "Why?" "Just trust me." He led her outside into the cool night air. The city noise drifted up from far below. Sirens, horns, the ambient hum of millions of people living their lives. "Now scream," Daniel said. "What?" "Scream, as loud as you can. No one can hear you up here." "That's insane." "So? You've been acting sane for years and look where it got you. Try insane for once." Victoria stared at him like he'd lost his mind. Then, slowly, she turned toward the city and opened her mouth. The first sound that came out was weak, tentative. But then something broke loose inside her, and she screamed, really screamed, pouring out years of frustration and pain and fear into the uncaring night. When she finally stopped, she was crying again, but this time it felt different, cleansing almost, like she'd purged something toxic. "Better?" Daniel asked. "Yeah, actually, yeah." She wiped her eyes and laughed. "I probably sounded like a crazy person." "Welcome to being human. We're all a little crazy." They stood on the balcony together, the wind whipping Victoria's hair around her face, and for the first time since Daniel had met her, she looked free. Not put together, or professional, or controlled. Just free. "I want to tell them," she said suddenly. "The board. Marcus. Everyone. I want to tell them the truth." Daniel turned to face her. "Are you sure?" "No. But I'm tired of lying, tired of pretending, and I think if I don't tell someone official, someone who can hold me accountable, I'll eventually convince myself I can use just once, and it'll be fine." She met his eyes. "I need external accountability. Real consequences if I fail." "Okay. When?" "Next board meeting, 3 days from now." She took a shaky breath. "Will you come with me?" "To the board meeting?" "No, that would be weird, but after. Wait for me somewhere. I'm going to need someone when it's over, regardless of how it goes." I'll be there. Victoria nodded, squaring her shoulders like she was preparing for battle. Okay. I can do this. You can do this. The next 3 days were the longest of Daniel's life. Victoria called him twice in the middle of the night, panicking about the upcoming meeting, convinced she was about to destroy everything she'd built. Each time, Daniel talked her down, reminded her why she was doing this, convinced her to wait until morning before making any final decisions. What if they fire me? She asked at 2 a.m. the night before the meeting. What if they force me out of my own company? Then you'll figure out what comes next. But Victoria, living in fear of what they might do is worse than knowing for sure. Is it though? Yeah, it is. Trust me. The day of the board meeting, Daniel couldn't focus on anything. He dropped Ethan at school, went home, tried to sleep, gave up, and spent the afternoon pacing his apartment. Victoria had texted him at 7 a.m., meeting at 2 p.m. At 2, I'm terrified. He'd responded, terrified means you care. That's good. You've got this. No response after that. Daniel imagined her in her office, practicing what she'd say, trying to find words to explain the unexplainable to people who'd invested millions based on her image of invincibility. At 4 p.m., his phone finally rang. It's done, Victoria said, her voice hollow. How did it go? I don't know. They didn't fire me, but they want me to take a leave of absence, minimum 3 months. They're putting the COO in charge temporarily while I go to treatment. Treatment. Rehab. They found a place in Malibu, very discreet, very expensive, for executives and celebrities who can't have their problems become public. She laughed bitterly. Apparently this happens more often than you'd think in Silicon Valley. They have a whole protocol for it. Daniel's heart sank. 3 months. When do you go? Tomorrow. They want me to start immediately, before word gets out, before I change my mind. She paused. I'm at a coffee shop near your apartment. Can you come? I know it's the middle of the day, but I can't go home yet. Can't be alone. Send me the address. I'll be there in 10 minutes. He found her in the back corner of a small cafe, hunched over a cup of tea she clearly hadn't touched. She looked smaller somehow, diminished, like admitting the truth had physically shrunk her. Daniel slid into the seat across from her. Hey, he said softly. Hey. She attempted a smile. So that happened. How do you feel? Terrified, relieved, humiliated, grateful. Victoria wrapped her hands around the mug. They were actually kind about it. Well, most of them. Richardson wanted me gone immediately. But the others, they talked about similar situations with other CEOs, other companies, made it sound almost normal. It is normal. Addiction doesn't discriminate. I know. Intellectually, I know that, but part of me still feels like I failed, like I should have been stronger. Strength is admitting you need help. You did that today. That takes more courage than hiding ever did. Victoria's eyes filled with tears. I won't see you for 3 months. That's... She trailed off. You've been my lifeline. I don't know how to do this without you. You'll figure it out, and I'll be here when you get back. Will you? What if 3 months from now you've moved on, forgotten about the crazy billionaire you helped through withdrawal? Daniel reached across the table and took her hand. I'm not going anywhere. And you're not crazy. You're just someone who's been carrying too much for too long. Can I ask you something? Anything. Why me? Really? Why did you decide to help me when you could have just walked away? Daniel thought about Sarah, about regret, about second chances and redemption. But more than that, he thought about Victoria. Not the billionaire, but the woman crying in his arms, the person underneath the armor. Because you reminded me that everyone's fighting something, he said finally. And because I like the person I've gotten to know these past few weeks. The real you, not the version you show the world. That person's worth fighting for. Victoria squeezed his hand. I'm going to miss you. I'm going to miss you too. But this is good, Victoria. Treatment is good. You'll get real help from people who actually know what they're doing, not just a cleaning man winging it. The cleaning man did pretty well, I think. I kept you alive until you could get real help, that's all. That's everything. She stood up, still holding his hand. Walk me out? They left the cafe together and stood on the sidewalk as afternoon traffic rushed past. Victoria looked up at the sky, then back at Daniel. "Thank you," she said, "for seeing me, for staying, for not giving up even when I wanted to give up on myself." "You're welcome. Now go get better. Real better, not just surviving better." "I will." She hesitated, then pulled him into a hug. "I'll call you, if they let me. I don't know what the rules are about outside contact." "I'll be waiting." Daniel held her tightly, this woman who'd somehow become important to him in ways he hadn't anticipated. "You're going to be okay, Victoria. Better than okay." When she pulled back, she was crying again, but smiling too. "See you in 3 months, Daniel Brooks. See you in 3 months." He watched her get into a car, not a town car, just a regular Uber, and drive away. Then he stood there on the sidewalk, feeling the absence of her presence like a physical thing, and wondered if he'd just made the biggest mistake of his life by letting her go, or if he'd just given her the greatest gift he could offer, the space to save herself. The first week without Victoria felt strange, like Daniel had lost something he didn't realize he'd been holding on to. He returned to his regular cleaning schedule, picking up shifts at other buildings, but the 43rd floor of the Zenith Tower stayed dark. The apartment sat empty, a monument to wealth and loneliness, waiting for its owner to return. Ethan noticed the change immediately. "Is Ms. Hale okay?" he asked over dinner on the third night. "You seem sad." "She's getting help," Daniel said, pushing pasta around his plate. "She's going to be gone for a while, but she's going to be okay." "Do you miss her?" The question caught Daniel off guard. He thought about Victoria crying on his shoulder, screaming into the Los Angeles night, holding his hand in that cafe like he was the only solid thing in her world. "Yeah, buddy, I do." "Like you miss Mom?" "Different. But yeah, I miss her." Ethan was quiet for a moment, then said, "I think Mom would like her. Ms. Hale, I mean. She was nice to me." Daniel felt his throat tighten. "I think Mom would like her too." 2 weeks passed with no word. Daniel hadn't expected contact. Treatment facilities usually restricted communication during the early stages, but the silence still gnawed at him. He found himself wondering about her constantly. Was she okay? Was the treatment working? Had she given up and left? Was she angry at him for encouraging her to go? The questions circled his mind during shifts, during Ethan's soccer games, during the quiet hours after midnight when sleep wouldn't come. He'd text her number sometimes, knowing she wouldn't respond, just sending small updates. Ethan got an A on his history test. It rained today for the first time in months. "Still here if you need me." On the 18th day, his phone rang at 2 p.m. Unknown number. Daniel almost didn't answer, but something made him pick up. "Daniel?" Victoria's voice sounded different, clearer somehow, steadier. "They finally gave me phone privileges. I only have 10 minutes, but I wanted to hear your voice." Relief flooded through him. "How are you? Are you okay?" "I'm getting there. It's hard, really hard, but good hard, if that makes sense." She laughed, and it sounded more genuine than any laugh he'd heard from her before. "I'm learning things about myself, not all of them pleasant." "Like what?" "Like I've been running from my parents' death for 15 years. Like I built an empire as a monument to prove they didn't die for nothing, but I never actually grieved them. Like I don't know who I am when I'm not being Victoria Hale, CEO." She paused. "It's terrifying and liberating at the same time." "That sounds like progress." "My therapist says the same thing. Dr. Chen, she's tough but good. Makes me actually think instead of just deflecting." Victoria's voice softened. "I told her about you, about how you helped me." "What did she say?" "That I'm lucky. That a lot of people don't have someone who sees past their defenses, someone who cares enough to stay." She was quiet for a moment. "I miss you, Daniel. Is that weird? To miss someone I barely know?" "You know me, maybe better than people who've known me for years." "I've been thinking about what you said, about finding out who I want to be instead of who I think I should be. I'm still figuring that out, but I'm starting to get glimpses of her." "Yeah? Who is she?" "Someone smaller, quieter. Someone who maybe doesn't need to conquer the world to feel worthwhile." Victoria laughed again. "The board would hate her, but I think I might like her." I think I'd like her too. Daniel, A voice in the background interrupted her. I have to go. They're strict about time limits, but thank you for the texts. I wasn't supposed to see them yet, but they let me read them this morning. They helped more than you know. Victoria, wait. Before you go, I'm proud of you. You're doing the work. That matters. Thank you. Her voice cracked. I'll call again when I can. 2 more months. I can do 2 more months. You can do 2 more months. The line went dead. Daniel stood in his kitchen, phone pressed to his ear, feeling both better and worse than before the call. Better because she was okay, she was fighting, she was finding herself. Worse because 2 more months felt like an eternity. Life continued its forward march. Ethan's soccer season ended with a tournament loss that devastated him for exactly 3 days before he discovered skateboarding. Daniel picked up extra shifts to cover the loss of the Zenith Tower contract, working himself to exhaustion to avoid thinking too much about the empty penthouse and the woman in Malibu learning to be someone new. Victoria called twice more over the next month, once to tell him she'd made it to 30 days clean and the staff had thrown her a small celebration, once to tell him about a breakthrough in therapy where she'd finally cried about her parents' death, really cried, the kind of grief she'd been stuffing down for 15 years. I thought dealing with it would destroy me, she said, but it actually made me feel lighter, like I've been carrying around this weight and I finally set it down. That's what healing looks like, Daniel told her. Not comfortable, but necessary. I'm scared, though, about coming back, about whether I can stay clean in the real world with all the pressure and stress, and she stopped herself. Dr. Chen says I'm catastrophizing, that I need to focus on today, not 2 months from now. Dr. Chen's smart. She says I should invite you to Family Day. Daniel's heart stuttered. Family Day? It's this thing they do in the last month. Bring in important people from your life, help repair relationships, get support systems in place. Victoria sounded nervous. You don't have to come. I know it's weird and we're not family, but you're the closest thing I have to... I'll come. Just tell me when. Really? Really? 3 weeks later, Daniel drove to Malibu. The treatment center was tucked into the hills, discreet and expensive looking, with ocean views and meditation gardens. He felt completely out of place pulling up in his 12-year-old Honda, surrounded by luxury cars and drivers in suits. A staff member met him at the entrance. You're here for Victoria Hale? Yes. Follow me. She's waiting in the garden. They walked through pristine hallways decorated in soothing neutrals, past rooms where Daniel caught glimpses of other people doing the same hard work Victoria was doing. The garden was at the back of the facility, a carefully landscaped space with stone paths and flowering plants, and the sound of water trickling from a fountain. Victoria sat on a bench overlooking the ocean, her back to him. She'd cut her hair, shorter, just past her shoulders, and she wore simple jeans and a white t-shirt. No suit, no armor. When she turned at the sound of his footsteps, Daniel barely recognized her. She looked younger, softer, real. Hi, she said, standing up. You came. I said I would. They stood there awkwardly for a moment, this man and woman who'd become so important to each other under the strangest circumstances, now reunited in a place dedicated to healing. Then Victoria crossed the distance between them and hugged him, and Daniel held her like he'd wanted to since the day she drove away. You look good, he said when they pulled apart. Healthy. I feel good, scared but good. She gestured to the bench. Sit? We have an hour before the family session starts. They sat together, looking out at the Pacific. The ocean stretched endless and blue, waves crashing against rocks below with rhythmic persistence. Thank you for coming, Victoria said. I wasn't sure you would. Wasn't sure you'd want to be dragged deeper into my mess. It's not a mess anymore. It's recovery. Still, you have your own life. Your son. I'm sure you have better things to do than drive to Malibu to see your former client work through her issues. Victoria. Daniel turned to face her. You're not my former client. You're my friend. And friends show up. Her eyes filled with tears. I'm not used to having friends. Real ones, I mean. People who don't want something from me. Get used to it. She smiled, wiping her eyes. I've learned so much here. About myself. about why I used, about what I was really running from. She picked at a loose thread on her jeans. My therapist says I built an identity around achievement because I needed to prove my parents' sacrifice meant something, that I was worthy of surviving when they didn't. That's heavy. It is, but acknowledging it helps, makes it less powerful. She looked at him. She also says I have to build a support system for when I leave. People who know the truth and can help keep me accountable. I don't have many people who fit that description. You have me. I do, and I'm grateful for that. But Daniel, you can't be my only support. That's too much pressure on one person. So we find others. How? I don't exactly have a lot of honest relationships. Then you build them. Start fresh. Find people who know the real you, not the brand. Victoria laughed. The real me is kind of a disaster. The real you is brave and human and worth knowing. They talked until it was time for the family session, Victoria telling him about group therapy and meditation practices and the tools she was learning to manage stress without substances. Daniel told her about Ethan's skateboarding phase and the new client he'd picked up at another building and how strange it felt to clean apartments without wondering if she was okay. The family session was intense. Victoria sat in a circle with Daniel and her therapist and two other patients with their own support people, talking about fears and triggers and plans for life after treatment. Daniel listened as Victoria outlined her strategy: reduced work schedule, regular therapy, meetings with a support group for recovering addicts, boundaries with her board about expectations and workload. I'm also considering stepping back from the CEO role, she said, and the words seemed to cost her something. Maybe moving to a different position in the company, chief innovation officer or something. Less day-to-day pressure, more creative work. How do you feel about that? Dr. Chen asked. Terrified. The company is my identity. Has been for 10 years. Giving up control feels like giving up who I am. Victoria glanced at Daniel. But a friend reminded me that maybe who I've been isn't who I want to be anymore. After the session, they walked through the gardens again. The sun was starting to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. 2 more weeks, Victoria said. Then I'm back in the real world, back to the penthouse and the company and all the triggers that made me use in the first place. But you'll be different, stronger. Will I, though? What if I get back and everything's too much and I can't handle it? Then you call me, or your therapist, or your sponsor. You don't have to handle it alone. Victoria stopped walking and turned to face him. Can I ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest? Always. Why are you really doing this? What do you get out of helping me? Daniel had asked himself the same question 100 times over the past 3 months. He'd examined his motivations, questioned whether this was about Victoria or about Sarah, about redemption or about something else entirely. At first it was about Sarah, he said honestly, about not failing someone again. But somewhere along the way, it became about you, about seeing someone fight so hard to save themselves and wanting to support that fight. He met her eyes. You matter, Victoria. Not your company, not your money, not your achievements. You, the person underneath all that. She matters. I'm not used to mattering for just being me. Then get used to that too. She laughed through tears. You keep telling me to get used to things because you keep acting like you don't deserve basic human connection. Maybe I don't. Maybe I've been such a terrible person for so long that... Stop. Daniel's voice was firm. You made mistakes. You got lost. You needed help. None of that makes you terrible. It makes you human. Victoria wiped her eyes and took a shaky breath. Okay, human. I can try to be human. That's all anyone can do. They stood in the fading light, 2 people from different worlds who'd found each other in the darkness and helped each other towards something resembling light. The moment stretched between them, waited with everything unsaid, everything that had happened over the past months, everything that might happen next. I should go, Daniel said finally. Long drive back and Ethan's at a friend's house until 8. Thank you for coming. It meant everything. 2 more weeks. Then you're home. Home. Victoria tested the word. I don't think I've thought of the penthouse as home in years. It's been more like a fancy hotel room I happen to sleep in. Maybe that changes too. Maybe everything changes. Daniel drove home as the sun disappeared below the horizon, his mind full of Victoria's face and her tears and her hope. He'd done what he set out to do, helped her get to treatment, supported her through the hardest decision of her life. Now she was healing, finding herself, building a future that didn't require substances to survive. His part in her story should be over. Should be. But it didn't feel over. It felt like a chapter ending, yes, but not the book. Not yet. The 2 weeks until Victoria's release crawled by. Daniel cleaned apartments and raised his son and lived his normal life. But part of his mind stayed in Malibu, wondering how she was doing, counting down days. On the morning she was supposed to come home, his phone rang at 10 a.m. "I'm out," Victoria said, her voice shaky but excited. "Officially discharged. I'm in a car heading back to the city, and I'm terrified and thrilled and... Daniel, I did it. 90 days. You did it. How do you feel?" "Like everything's too bright and too loud and too much. But good. Scared, but good." She paused. "Can I see you? Tonight? I know you probably have work, but I could really use a friendly face right now." "I'll be there. What time?" 8? "I have a meeting with Marcus at 3 and therapy at 5, but after that I'm free." 8 o'clock. "I'll bring dinner." "You don't have to... I'm bringing dinner. You just focus on getting through today." When Daniel arrived at the 43rd floor that evening, carrying Thai food and nervous energy, Victoria opened the door and he saw the transformation fully. She looked like herself, whoever that self was, in ways she never had before. The sharp edges had softened, the armor had come off. She was just a woman standing in her apartment, smiling at a friend. "Come in," she said. "Welcome to my home." Weird saying that. Feels like the first time it's actually true. The apartment looked different, smaller somehow, though nothing had physically changed. Or maybe it was just that Victoria filled the space differently now, took up room instead of disappearing into the corners. They ate dinner on the couch, talking about her first day back. The meeting with Marcus had gone well. He'd been supportive, promised to help manage her workload, agreed to the reduced schedule. Her therapist had helped her process the anxiety of being home. The board had sent flowers and a card welcoming her back. "Everyone's being so nice," Victoria said. "It's unsettling. I keep waiting for the other shoe to drop." "Maybe there is no other shoe. Maybe people actually care about you. That's what Dr. Chen says, that I need to accept support instead of waiting for it to be taken away." She set down her plate. "I want to show you something." She led him to her office and pointed to the wall behind her desk. Where there used to be magazine covers and awards and press clippings, there was now a single photograph. Victoria as a child, maybe 7 or 8, standing between her parents. All 3 of them were laughing, caught in a moment of pure joy. "I found it in storage," she said. "Hadn't looked at it in years, couldn't bear to, but Dr. Chen said I needed to stop running from them, stop feeling guilty for surviving, so I hung it up." She touched the frame gently. "It still hurts to look at, but it feels right having them here." "They'd be proud of you," Daniel said. "What you've done, getting help, fighting to be better." "You think so?" "I know so." They returned to the living room and Victoria poured them both tea, chamomile calming, part of her new routine. They sat together in comfortable silence, watching the city lights, and Daniel realized this was what friendship looked like. Not dramatic rescues or late-night crises. Just 2 people sharing space, sharing time, sharing the quiet moments between the chaos. "I've been thinking," Victoria said eventually, "about what comes next. The board approved my proposal to step back from CEO. I'll be Chief Innovation Officer starting next month. Less operational stress, more creative work. How do you feel about that?" "Free? Terrified. But mostly free." She smiled. "I also hired an assistant. A real one, not just someone to manage my calendar. Someone to help me maintain boundaries, keep my schedule reasonable, make sure I'm taking care of myself." "That's good. That's really good." "And I joined a support group for executives dealing with addiction. Turns out I'm not alone in this. There are a lot of us who burned out and turned to substances to keep going." She looked at him. "I've been so isolated for so long. It's strange realizing other people understand." "You don't have to be isolated anymore." "I know, I'm learning that." She set down her tea. "I also want to do something with my story. Maybe write about it. Maybe speak about it. I don't know yet. But I feel like if I went through all this, I should use it to help others who are struggling. That's brave. Or stupid. The press will have a field day. Tech billionaire admits drug problem. The headlines write themselves. Let them. The people who matter will understand. Victoria was quiet for a moment, then said, "You matter, Daniel. I need you to know that. What you did for me, it saved my life. Literally. I would have died in that apartment if you hadn't seen me, really seen me. You saved yourself. I just gave you a push in the right direction. You gave me more than a push. You gave me hope. Showed me what real support looks like. Taught me that vulnerability isn't weakness." Her voice cracked. "I don't know how to repay that." "You don't repay it. You pay it forward." "How?" "However you want. Write your story. Help other people. Build a life worth living. That's the best repayment I could ask for." They talked until midnight, about recovery and resilience, about Ethan and her company, about all the small ways life continued to surprise them both. When Daniel finally stood to leave, Victoria walked him to the door. "Same time next week?" she asked. "I don't clean here anymore, remember? You're not on my schedule. I'm not asking you to clean. I'm asking you to come as a friend. Have dinner. Talk. Unless you don't want to." "I want to," Daniel said quickly. "I'd like that." "Good. Because I need friends who knew me at my worst and stayed anyway. You're one of approximately 2 people who fit that description." "Who's the other?" "My therapist. But I pay her, so I'm not sure it counts." Daniel laughed. "I'll be here next week, same time. Bring Ethan if you want. I'd like to see him again. Maybe we could order pizza, watch a movie. Normal friend stuff." "Normal friend stuff. I like that." Over the following months, a new pattern emerged. Daniel would visit the penthouse once or twice a week, sometimes with Ethan, sometimes alone. They'd have dinner and talk about their days, Victoria's therapy sessions and board meetings, Daniel's shifts and Ethan's school activities. They'd watch movies and play Scrabble and do all the normal things that friends did, slowly building a relationship that wasn't based on crisis or need, but on genuine affection. Victoria stayed clean. Some days were harder than others. She'd call Daniel at odd hours, talking through cravings or stressful board situations, but she didn't use. She went to meetings 3 times a week, saw Dr. Chen twice a week, and slowly rebuilt her life on a foundation of honesty instead of performance. 6 months after her return from treatment, Victoria invited Daniel and Ethan to a small celebration dinner. When they arrived, the apartment was full of people Daniel had never met. Victoria's assistant, a few colleagues from work, her sponsor from the support group, even Dr. Chen. "What's all this?" Daniel asked. 6 months clean," Victoria said, beaming. "Dr. Chen says milestones should be celebrated with the people who matter, so here you all are." Ethan ran off to explore the penthouse with Victoria's assistant's daughter, and Daniel found himself in conversation with Dr. Chen. "You're the cleaning man," she said. "Victoria talks about you constantly." "Does she?" "She credits you with saving her life. Says you saw her when she was invisible." Daniel felt uncomfortable with the praise. "I just did what anyone would do." "That's not true, and you know it. Most people would have looked away. You stayed." Dr. Chen smiled. "She's lucky to have you in her life." "I'm lucky to have her too." Later, when the guests had left and Ethan had fallen asleep on the couch, Daniel and Victoria stood at the windows overlooking the city. "Thank you for this," Daniel said, "for including us. You're the reason there's anything to celebrate." Victoria turned to face him. "I've been thinking about something. A way to pay forward what you did for me." "Yeah?" "I want to start a foundation for people in high-pressure industries dealing with addiction and mental health issues. Provide treatment, support, resources. Make it easier for people to get help before they hit rock bottom like I did." She was animated, excited in a way Daniel had never seen. "I've been working on the details with my lawyer. I want to fund it myself, make sure it's accessible, regardless of ability to pay." "Victoria, that's incredible. You inspired it. You and Dr. Chen and everyone who helped me. I want to create a system where people don't have to wait for a cleaning man to notice they're dying, where asking for help is normal instead of shameful." "What will you call it?" She smiled. Second Chances Foundation, because everyone deserves one. Daniel felt his eyes well up. This was what healing looked like. Not just survival, but transformation. Not just getting better, but becoming someone who helped others get better too. Your parents would be so proud, he said. Victoria's smile wavered, but held. I hope so. I'm finally living a life that honors them instead of running from their memory. They stood together in the quiet, the city lights spreading out below them like scattered stars, and Daniel thought about how strange life was. How a chance encounter between a billionaire and a cleaning man had led to this, to friendship, to healing, to second chances for them both. A year after Victoria came home from treatment, Daniel received a call from an unknown number. When he answered, a professional voice said, "Is this Daniel Brooks? I'm calling from TechCrunch. We're writing a story about Victoria Hale's new foundation and her recovery from addiction. She gave us your name as someone who played a significant role in her journey. Would you be willing to comment?" Daniel's heart raced. "I'd need to talk to Victoria first." "Of course, she said you might say that. She also said to tell you it's okay, that she wants your story told too, if you're comfortable with it." He called Victoria immediately. "TechCrunch? I'm going public with my story," she said. "The whole thing. The addiction, the recovery, the foundation. And I want to acknowledge the people who helped me, including you, but only if you're okay with it." "Are you sure? This will be everywhere." "I'm sure. Hiding it only has power if I'm ashamed. And I'm not anymore. What happened to me, what I went through, it's part of my story. I'm not going to pretend it didn't happen." She paused. "But I won't include you if it makes you uncomfortable." Daniel thought about it, about exposure and privacy and the weirdness of becoming part of a billionaire's public narrative. But he also thought about all the other people out there struggling, afraid to ask for help, convinced they were alone. "Include me," he said. "If it helps someone else, include me." The article came out 2 weeks later. The headline read, "Victoria Hale's Comeback, How a Tech Billionaire Rebuilt Her Life After Addiction." It detailed her struggle, her recovery, the foundation she was launching, and it included a section about Daniel, the night shift cleaning man who'd noticed something was wrong and refused to look away. His phone exploded with messages. Old friends from his EMT days, parents from Ethan's school, his supervisor at the cleaning company, impressed and slightly shocked, even a few journalists asking for interviews. But the message that mattered most came from Victoria. "Thank you for letting me tell the truth, all of it. You gave me that gift first, and I'm grateful I could give it back." The foundation launched 3 months later with a gala that Victoria insisted Daniel attend. He borrowed a suit and felt completely out of place among tech executives and venture capitalists, but Victoria stayed by his side most of the night, introducing him as the friend who saved my life. During her speech, she spoke openly about her addiction, her recovery, her ongoing work to stay healthy, and she talked about the importance of people who see past the surface, who care enough to ask hard questions, who stay when it would be easier to leave. "Someone once told me that vulnerability isn't weakness," she said, looking directly at Daniel. "That it's the only way to truly connect with others. I didn't believe him at first, but he was right. And this foundation exists because of that lesson. Because I finally learned to be vulnerable, to ask for help, to accept that I don't have to do everything alone." The crowd applauded. Daniel felt Ethan squeeze his hand. His son had insisted on coming, proud of his dad in ways Daniel was still learning to accept. After the gala, Victoria, Daniel, and Ethan went back to the penthouse for pizza and movies, their new tradition. Victoria had changed out of her gown into jeans and a sweater, comfortable in her own skin in ways she never had been before. "You know what's funny?" she said, sitting on the floor with them, pizza box open between them. "A year ago, I thought losing control of my image would destroy me. Thought admitting weakness would mean the end of everything I'd built. And now?" Daniel asked. "Now I realize I had it backwards. Admitting weakness didn't destroy me. It saved me. And the things I thought mattered, the perfect image, the constant achievement, the control, those were actually what was killing me." She smiled at Ethan, who was absorbed in the movie. "Real strength is letting people see you, really see you, scary as hell, but worth it." "You're doing good work," Daniel said. "The foundation, speaking out. You're helping people." "We're helping people. I couldn't have done any of this without you." you would have found another way. Maybe, but I'm glad it was you. Victoria met his eyes. You asked me once what I was running from. I've been thinking about that question, and I realized I wasn't just running from my parents' death. I was running from the possibility of loss. If I never let anyone close, they couldn't leave. If I never showed weakness, no one could hurt me. If I controlled everything, nothing could surprise me. And now? Now I'm learning that the best parts of life are the things you can't control. The surprises, the connections, the moments that catch you off guard. She gestured around the penthouse. This place used to feel like a prison. Now it feels like home. Not because anything changed about it, but because I changed. They watched the movie, some animated thing Ethan had picked, and Daniel thought about transformations, about how people could change, really change, when they finally stopped running and faced the truth, about how second chances weren't just about survival, but about becoming someone new. Later, after Ethan had fallen asleep and Daniel was getting ready to carry him home, Victoria walked them to the door. Same time next week? She asked, the question that had become their ritual. Same time next week, Daniel confirmed. Bring Ethan, we're making tacos. You're cooking. Don't sound so shocked. I've been taking lessons. Dr. Chen says learning new skills is good for recovery. Plus, I was tired of ordering in every night. Daniel laughed. Victoria Hale, tech billionaire, learning to cook. The headlines write themselves. Let them. I'm done caring what headlines say about me. She smiled. I care what real people think. People who know me. Like you. Well, this real person thinks you're doing amazing. Right back at you. Daniel carried Ethan to the elevator, his son's head heavy on his shoulder, and as the doors closed, he caught one last glimpse of Victoria standing in her doorway. She waved and he waved back, and the simplicity of that moment, two friends saying goodbye, felt like the most profound thing in the world. Because a year ago, Victoria Hale had been dying in a penthouse, alone and desperate, hidden behind walls of money and success. And now she was learning to cook, building a foundation, living honestly, choosing vulnerability over perfection. A year ago, Daniel Brooks had been a cleaning man drowning in grief and regret, wondering if he'd ever stop punishing himself for not saving his wife. And now he'd helped save someone else. Not because it erased what happened with Sarah, nothing could do that, but because it proved that failure didn't have to be final. That second chances were real. That sometimes the people who need saving and the people who need to save get lucky enough to find each other. 6 months later, the Second Chances Foundation held its first graduation ceremony for people who'd completed treatment. Victoria stood on stage, flanking clients who'd fought their way back from the edge, and told her own story one more time. The room was full of families and friends, and people who'd all learned the same hard lesson, that asking for help wasn't weakness, it was wisdom. Daniel sat in the audience with Ethan, watching Victoria speak with confidence and honesty, and felt a sense of completion. This was what Sarah had wanted, for him to stay open to life, to connection, to possibility. He'd honored that promise in ways he never expected, had found purpose in the strangest places, had discovered that healing often happened in the space between two people willing to see each other truly. After the ceremony, Victoria found them in the crowd. What did you think? She asked, slightly breathless. I think you're exactly who you're supposed to be, Daniel said. Who's that? Someone real, someone brave, someone who takes her pain and turns it into something that helps others. He smiled. Someone worth knowing. Victoria's eyes filled with tears. The good kind, the kind that came from gratitude instead of grief. Thank you, Daniel, for everything. For seeing me when I was invisible. For staying when you could have left. For being exactly what I needed exactly when I needed it. You did the same for me. Did I? Yeah. You reminded me that saving someone doesn't undo the past, but it can change the future. You gave me a second chance too. Different kind, but just as important. They stood together in the crowded room, the billionaire and the cleaning man who'd somehow become friends, who'd somehow saved each other, who'd somehow proven that connection could happen anywhere, between anyone, if people were brave enough to be honest. Ethan tugged on Daniel's sleeve. Dad, can we get ice cream? Victoria promised. I did promise, Victoria said, laughing. Come on, there's a place down the street. My treat. They walked out into the Los Angeles evening, the three of them, and Daniel thought about beginnings and endings and all the messy, beautiful stuff in between. Thought about how sometimes the most important moments in life happened in the quiet spaces. In a penthouse at 3 a.m., in a coffee shop conversation, in the simple act of showing up. The city lights came on as darkness fell. Millions of people living their lives, fighting their battles, surviving their own private wars. Somewhere out there, someone else was struggling. Someone else was hiding. Someone else was dying slowly and praying someone would notice. And maybe, if they were lucky, someone would. Someone would see past the surface. Someone would refuse to look away. Someone would stay. Because that's what second chances looked like. Not dramatic rescues or perfect solutions, but steady presence. Honest questions. Refusal to accept the lies we tell ourselves and each other. Victoria Hale had built an empire and nearly destroyed herself. Daniel Brooks had lost everything and found purpose in the ruins. Together, they'd proven that healing was possible, that change was real, that no one was too far gone to find their way back. And as they walked through the Los Angeles night toward ice cream and conversation and the ordinary magic of friendship, they carried that truth with them, a light for others lost in their own darkness, a promise that survival was only the beginning, that the best parts of life happened after you stopped running and finally let yourself be seen.